Good morning. Today, I'm so happy to introduce you to my new young friend. Well, everybody's my young friend these days, but it's Courtney Lowman. She lives in Arizona, and she was so nice to have me on her podcast, which is called Journey of Ruth.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Courtney, would you just tell us a little bit about your family, first of all, and then your ministry, and why did you choose that title for your podcast? If you can remember all those questions, let's start with your family.
Absolutely. I know I do the same thing. I throw too many questions at
Yeah.
once and I'm like, okay, hold on, let's start with this. Well, first of all, thank you so much for just inviting me on. And I'm very excited to chat with you. And my family is very energetic and it's me and all boys. So
Oh,
I've got
wow.
my, I've got me, I've got my husband, my two young boys who are 6 and 3, and then I've got our two male black labs. So when I write hashtag boy mom, it is very serious.
Wow.
But it's a lot of fun. I grew up with a lot of boys, so doing lots of outside stuff and hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, all that kind of stuff. We like that around our house. I do have a podcast, The Journey of Ruth. My real passion is in discipleship and mentorship. That came from a really a blessing in my life of having wonderful disciples and mentors in my life and realizing that that was something that a lot of people did not have or grow up with
Mm.
and wanting to see people connect in that way, knowing that it doesn't matter how old you are, you need someone in your life that's discipling you. I mean, you and I just talked before we pressed record about how you have a discipler and how I have a discipler, and then we have people that we disciple.
Mm-hmm.
It is so important to have those people that are speaking into your life and that know about you because you've let them in, right? That's kind of that caveat there. You have to let someone in if you're gonna let them disciple you. So I started the Journey of Ruth to share those people with the world, those people that I had been blessed with. And I was like, man, there is so much good wisdom. Every time I sit and have coffee with you, I just want to record it and share it with the world. Right.
Right.
And so that is why I created that. And Journey of Ruth, my husband actually came up with the name.
Really?
I'll give him all the credit.
Good.
I had a lot of different names, but I knew that I wanted it to be about discipleship. And he said, well, what about Journey of Ruth? And I was like, explain that. He's like, well, you think about Ruth in the Bible and that she put herself in the place of discipleship under Naomi. Naomi tried to send her home and said,
Yeah.
go back home to your people and your gods. And she said, no, I want to stay with you and learn about the one true God. So she put herself in discipleship under Naomi. And then that led to her meeting Boaz and then going into the lineage of Jesus. I mean, it ended well for her in the
It
end.
did. I love
did.
that romance story.
I know. It's so wonderful. And then also Ruth happens to be my middle name. So
Oh,
it
I didn't
kind of
know
works
that.
perfect. Yes. So
Oh, how sweet. Is your husband a pastor?
he's not. He's
Okay.
not. He is a photographer. He is a
Oh, yeah.
landscaper. He's a hunter. If you
Oh,
really ask him
yeah.
what he's doing, he's an outdoorsman for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your father, though, a pastor,
Oh
no?
yes, my dad
That's
was
where
a
I got the
pastor.
idea. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Oh, that's a whole nother podcast to be a pastor's child.
It is. Well, and that's where the
Yeah.
discipleship came from.
Oh,
When you are the pastor's daughter, a lot of people are going to just offer their mentorship,
whether you want it or not.
whether you want it or not. But I look back and I know that my parents did a wonderful job of protecting me from the people who wanted to give their opinions, but maybe didn't need to, but
Mm-hmm.
also allowing and encouraging adults in our church that were wise to speak into my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that had a profound impact on my life now.
I'll tell you a short, funny story. I used to be a high school counselor.
Okay.
And I had this mother call me one day and said, would I please call her daughter in and talk to her about such and such? So the mother was hovering. And I said, you know that I don't have children because I was single.
Mm-hmm.
Like she was really putting a lot of responsibility on what I could do to magically transform her daughter. And she goes, yeah, but she loves you and she'll listen to you. And
Mm,
I thought, okay, then that's so
mhm.
true. I had a good relationship with her in the classroom because I was also a teacher. And so after I became a mother of three daughters, I continue to pray, Courtney, that other women will come into their lives. They listen to
Yeah.
me to a certain extent because they're older now and they are wiser and they know to, but there are certain topics I do not broach unless
Mhm,
they ask me first.
mhm.
And I had to learn that the hard way. And I think God blesses us abundantly. Obviously, you've been blessed from the very get-go
Yeah.
with women who were willing to pour their wisdom into you. And what a blessing that was to your parents. I bet they were going, yes, somebody else is telling Courtney what she needs to hear.
Yeah,
Now, I find it interesting with you you're probably in your 30s.
I am.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I'm in my late 60s. And but back in the day, we called it discipleship. There was a
Yeah.
beautiful book called Disciplines of a Beautiful Woman by Anne Ortland, which is still in print.
Mhm. Yes.
And we use that term back and forth, discipling. Are you being discipled? But nowadays, people use the word mentoring. Do you see any difference in the two?
That's really interesting. The What I found as I have talked to different groups of people is that mentorship is more widely accepted.
Why is
Discipleship is scary.
ah
Why is that? I don't know. I haven't quite figured that out, but this is just my thought. Mentorship in my mind, I read a book called oh gosh, now I can't remember the name of it, but the author is Dana Yeakley. And it's a mentorship book. And she described, I'm sorry, it's a discipleship book because
okay?
she described mentorship as teaching someone something or some way of life. So you can have a
Oh,
mentor at work, you can have a mentor teacher who is helping you with a certain subject. But discipleship, the goal there is to help the person become more like Christ and not like you.
hmm, that's
And
beautiful.
it's amazing to think of that as the description, because in my mind what that does for me is it actually takes some of the pressure off of me. Sometimes people are like, oh, I could never disciple someone because I don't know enough, I didn't get a degree. Well, guess what, neither did I. Not
Hmm.
well, I have a degree but not in seminary.
Yeah.
you know and I've never been a lead at a church or anything like that. But the idea here is that I'm not trying to make someone more like me, right?
Right.
And because of that, I can share my shortcomings. I can share where I have made big mistakes.
Hmm.
I don't have to be afraid to hide that because someone's going to learn from my mistakes.
Hmm.
And the whole goal is to point them towards God and say, here's what the Bible says. And let's study the Bible together. Let's memorize scripture together. Let's definitely pray together. That should always be a part of it. But really focusing on how can we be more like Christ, not how can you be more like me.
Hmm.
I think that's the difference. But do I use the word mentorship more than I use discipleship? Yes, because that people do not tune out when they hear that. They tend to think, oh, discipleship, that's not something I need.
Hmm.
I don't.
I also like the fact that we can interchange those words or that we use mentorship more nowadays is because those who are not of faith, they understand mentorship. They understand the value of mentorship in business and in
Mhm.
the workplace. And
Yeah.
when my kids are working, one of my daughters works for Zillow,
Yeah.
they're all about mentorship because they it's kind of a cool thing to be mentored by someone. So when I say, oh, well, my
Yeah.
mentor met with me the other day, they kind of like, wow, they're jealous because they want a mentor. And of course, the main thing my mentor does is pray for me and live life
Mm.
alongside of me to help me become more like Jesus. But it opens a conversation then with
Yeah.
someone who has no clue who Jesus is and and would hopefully see Jesus in our lives, right,
Yeah.
Courtney? Like
Yeah.
what you were saying, we don't need to have this burden that if they meet with me, what if they learn the wrong thing? That they're not going to become more like Jesus.
Mhm.
There's so much we could say about mentoring. It reminds me though of what Oswald Chambers said, which was that we leave an aroma of Christ in the room so that they do not
Yes.
think of us when they leave the room. They think of Jesus. And
Yeah.
that's a spiritual thing. You and I both know that. Only the Holy
Mm-hmm.
Spirit can give off that fragrance in spite of who we are rather than
Yeah.
because of who we are.
Oh, for sure. I think that if you are able to, keep your focus on Christ and who God is, then it changes every part of you, right? It changes your speech, it changes your reactions to things, it changes your opinions of others and the world around you. And so you do leave a room differently than if you're going in there like, with your own self or your own preferences in mind. If you're going in thinking of it, or not even thinking about it, if you're constantly just in communication with God, then you're going to go into a room not even thinking, "Oh, I need to leave. I need to leave a good impression."
Right.
It's just going to happen because that's God is changing you.
Yeah.
By the way, that book is The Gentle Art of Discipling Women.
Oh, that's a beautiful title.
Yeah, yeah.
That someone, I think may have been someone I heard speak. They said, "Well, do you go in a room and look around where and worry about where you're going to sit because you don't know someone? Let's say you go to a women's conference or a Bible study or something, or even the church courtyard when we used to go to our church courtyard back in the day. But that
Back
will
in the
happen
day.
again. Or do you go in and see the woman who has no one sitting by her? And that's all about hospitality, but it's all about mentorship as well. And so it's been fun for me to walk in a room and go, well, I already know that person. So I know that person. And those women are already taken care of, but who is not taken care of? Now, if they're an extreme introvert, they don't necessarily want someone to sit by, but they kind of want one person to acknowledge that they mean something. And I've made some really fun friends that way because I came in and sat next to them because I am a raging extrovert, and I can tell you are as well.
I am.
I
That's
know.
true.
So speaking of making our lives count, I think it's thrilling to God that someone your age is talking about mentorship, because when I talk about it, people go, oh, well, that's just Sue, she's old. But someone your age, and I always tell them, look, someone who is older than you and someone who is younger than you. And so it needs to be going, maybe not simultaneously, depending on how busy we are, but at least, maybe one season you're being discipled and the next season you're pouring in to someone's life. But what legacy do you want to pass down to those around you? I mean, I could guess, but I'd like you to talk about it.
I mean, there are so many facets because I think, I think about the people that, listen to the podcast or the people that are in Bible studies that I teach. But then there's also my children and my friends. So I think that my goal in life is there was one day I was driving down the road and I was trying to make a life decision, a direction. And I was telling God all of the things that I could do well in this direction. I used to be a high school teacher.
Oh,
so yes. So we have that in common. So, but I was trying to decide if I was going to stay at home with my kids or if I was going to continue to teach school. And so I was telling God all of the things I could do really well and how I could continue to make a difference in the lives of these high school kids. Because I loved my job, loved it. And he said, well, that's great, but whose kingdom are you going to build? Yours or mine? And I was like, okay, well, fine then, if you have to win that way.
And explain that a little bit for those who are not well versed in kingdom, I don't know, phraseology. What do you think Jesus was really saying to you?
Yeah, it has actually taken me some time. I mean, I've been in church every day, but it's taken me some time to unpack that and say, what does that look like? What do you mean? And what I have come to is this. I think that the legacy that I want when people look back on my life, I want them to say, she loved Jesus, she loved his word, and she loved others. And so in turn, she chose to teach people to love Jesus, to love his word, and to love others. And that's what I want to see in my boys. I mean, I pray for them. I pray as men that they would be men who love Jesus, who are humble, who love others above themselves, and whatever that looks like. I mean, I don't know. They can be athletes, they can be teachers, they can be pastors or missionaries, whatever.
Hunters. They can be hunters.
Oh, they're going to be hunters.
Okay,
That's
but
for sure.
Courtney, I can hear someone's wheels turning right now as they're listening to you and thinking, well, you could have stayed a high school teacher and done those three things.
I did a lot of those things.
Right.
Yes. But
he was calling you to stay home with your kids. Is that what? That's what I think you're going to say.
That is. And it was, I was spending 60 hours a week at the school. And I loved that. It was wonderful. When we were dating, my husband would just come to the school and hang out with me there because I was just always there doing a musical. I was a choir teacher. So there were performances after school and after school choirs. And I just knew that I needed to step away and either for a short time, just be mom, or I needed to reinvent how this whole choir teacher thing looked. I couldn't be mom and work 60 hours a week. Plus, I didn't necessarily make enough as a mom, or I'm sorry, not as a mom. As a teacher.
I get that.
To warrant paying for childcare. So it made sense for me to stay home. Now I do work from home. I teach private voice and piano lessons here at the house. But what it has allowed me to do is to be home with my boys. And during the pandemic, we are now homeschooling for this year. We'll see what happens next year. We're not committed to it for forever. I am a secondary teacher, not primary. People are like, oh, homeschooling should be easy. You have a degree. I'm like,
totally different.
Secondary education, people. But no, I think that it was just important for me and the right choice for us, for me to come home and work from home. I made more money. I saw my family more. And what it led to was me realizing that discipleship was God's call on my life. And it led to the creation, or to me leading Bible studies at church, and then to the creation of the podcast. I can just see God's, provision and providence in all of that. But yeah, it took us taking a big step of faith in me staying home.
I bet your husband had some input in that as well.
He did. He was at home as a photographer.
Oh yeah.
And for the first 6 months. And then he was like, this isn't working. It meant we were both home with the newborn, both running businesses out of the house.
Too hard.
That was an adjustment. But so we did that whole thing that everyone just did during the pandemic.
Yeah. We're used to it. Yeah.
Years ago.
Yeah.
And so, but that led him to search for what God actually wanted him to do. So my kind of following God in faith led him to kind of break out of what he was already doing, and has led him on some interesting paths as well.
I remember after I had taught high school for 2 years, and I was kind of bored. I loved the students, but I was bored with my material a little bit. And I started meeting with some juniors that I'd had as freshmen. That's in my little book, Mentoring. That's how it started. Only I called it discipleship. And I just met with them for 3 months. And then I taught them how to meet with freshman girls for 3 months after that.
Okay.
And I got so excited about teaching then again because of the mentoring aspect of it. And God just flourished in my life as a result. And I just heard a Bible teacher say the other day that you don't learn something when you read it, or when you write about it, or when you hear it. You learn something when you give it away. And so it's really to our advantage that we disciple someone else, because then the material is actually getting through our minds and hearts. And I know you know this in a very real way. Well, what counsel would you give, or wisdom or advice really, to someone else who's perhaps feeling in the crossroads of making a tough decision like that, on what kind of legacy they really want to lead? Can you offer anything that would be of help?
Oh gosh. I would say, first of all, allow it to be a process. Don't put that on your prayer list and expect it to be figured out. I mean, mine took my oldest is 6 years old. So I probably took 5 years to really kind of narrow down
Wow.
finally what direction, like the purpose. Now, did I see bits and pieces of it in the last, 5 years? Yes. But it took 5 years of things developing to figure that out.
Hmm.
Um,
So don't rush it is what you're trying to say.
Don't rush it.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say stay in prayer about it. Read books or listen to books. That's a not a war, but a discussion in our household. I read books. My husband is solely audiobooks.
Yeah.
Which is fun. So read or listen to books or podcasts that are talking about the things that you love, because that can really inspire you. I also think that discipleship, shocker, you knew that I was going to throw that in there. I think that some of the women that God placed in my life right about the time that I had my oldest are some of the ladies that I wouldn't have ever thought that I'd be teaching a young mom's Bible study. But they came to me and said, hey, we have a young mom's Bible study. Would you be interested in leading it?
Wow.
And I was like, oh, sure. Hey, by the way, I'm 3 months pregnant with my second. And it's supposed to start 2 weeks after his due date. And so I did it anyway. I did it with him strapped to my chest for the first time. And I was partnered with another woman that really encouraged me. So placing those women around you that are going to look at you and going to look at the gifts that God has given you and recognize those and encourage you in those directions, that almost helped me as much as me doing my own search, helped me to see things that God had put in me that I couldn't see from the inside. Other people saw it within me. So that is one big thing I would say is find someone that can disciple you. And that can be a hard process. I know, like that's so hard. When you're like, okay, fine, Courtney, that's great. I want to get a discipler. Where do I even start?
That was my next question.
Oh, well, there you go. There we go. We're on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
And I got that question so many times that I actually created a process to work through. And I call it the PLAY process. It's an acronym PLAA for pray, look, ask, and act. You can go to my website, journeyofruthpodcast.com/download.
Okay.
And I think it's on the front screen as well. So you can
send that to me and then I'll put it in show notes so people don't have to write it down, because some people are just jogging right now or in their car.
That's right. Yeah.
We need something to act on. And I like it that you included that in your acronym. And I have asked the wrong person sometimes. So it's not like something that's held in cement. You don't have to worry about making a mistake. You just have to back out of it gracefully. Well, and that's I've gone too fast.
Right. And that's actually on there is what happens if you find someone that you think you want to mentor you and they say no. It's like, it's fine. And so in the first step of praying is, praying over what you would like to find, but looking is make a list of people, not just one person, but you're going to make a list of people. And then asking is not, hey, will you be my discipler or will you mentor me? It's actually ask them to coffee.
Yeah.
Like just ask them to coffee, because you may sit down and have coffee with them and realize that this person is actually not, that you just get that vibe. It's not, you're not clicking. Or maybe they're obviously too busy. Don't let that always like keep you from asking though, because sometimes we think people are too busy. Let them decide that they're too busy, not you. And then if you really are vibing with that person, that's the act, right? But if they say no, go back to that list and repeat the process. Because you're right. Sometimes you're going to ask someone, they're like, I just don't have time. I wish I could, but I just don't have time for that. And that's nothing against you. It's, just where they're at in life. So.
And often when people have asked me, I'll say, let's just meet one time and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
And that gives them hope that they don't get embarrassed that they asked me. And like, I know personally I'm too busy to bring in one more person on a regular basis, but I'll say, is it okay if we meet once a quarter and you just text me and we'll meet for coffee? And they are thrilled with that because they're busy with 3 kids homeschooling or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't have to look a certain way. Well, this has been a wonderful, wonderful time talking with you, Courtney. Do you have
Yes, it has.
last words that I didn't allow you to say because I was talking too much?
No, I think it's important to just have that community around you, right?
Mhm.
We were created for community. Especially 2020 has taken some of that community away. But if anything, what it has allowed me to see is it's taken the noise out, that because we can fill ourselves with a lot of events and activities and relationships that don't hold much weight.
Mm.
But what are important are the ones that stick, the ones that are honest, and the ones that are like deeper level. They're not surface level relationships. The deeper level ones are the ones that are really going to add to our lives. So I would say for sure, find that person that can walk alongside you, and walk with you in that. Stick with your Bible reading, learn to love God and learn to love his word.
Mm. I can just hear Naomi right now going, "Oh, go, you go," because like you said, she said, "I don't really want you to come with me, Ruth." And Ruth goes, "I'm coming anyway."
Right.
And sometimes we need to be that way. Well, thank you. This has been a delight. God bless you and your wonderful kids. And we're going to send and your husband, and we'll send everybody over to your great podcast, Journey of Ruth.
Thank
and
you.
if you want to hear about hospitality, I'm on there too.
Yes, you are.
Thank you so much. You have a great day.
Thank you. You too.